Hello and welcome, our dear audiences. Today, our topic of discussion will be NATO's largest exercise of the year. The Steadfast Dart 2026 was carried out in Germany with the participation of 10,000 soldiers from 11 NATO countries. Turkey joined this exercise with a high number of forces and very important capabilities, like Anadolu amphibious assault and drone carrier ship. We will analyze both the importance of this exercise and the role of Turkish forces in this exercise with General Ufuk Ras. Welcome, General.
Thank you.
General, nice to have you here. Let me start by asking you, what is the purpose and importance of this exercise for NATO? And is NATO's largest exercise primarily a credible deterrent signal towards Russia? Or does the exercise demonstrate cohesion among the 32 NATO members? What are your opinions?
You have 3 points in your question. The first point is the
Yeah.
purpose of this exercise. Every military exercise has similar objectives and purposes. First of all, the basic purpose of any military exercise is to test the capabilities, the concepts, warfighting doctrines, and so on, the procedures, processes, and also to train the troops and personnel. In this case, the tested force for NATO was NATO's Allied Reaction Force. This is a high readiness multinational force which is able to carry out very wide range of missions. This is used for deterrence purposes or collective defense purposes. This force can also be used in NATO's crisis response operations. So the main purpose of this was to test the capabilities of this force and to train this force. The number one priority was the strategic deployment, because it has to be a very rapid deployable force, and the troops are coming from different nations. For example, for Turkey, it took about 10 days from home bases to deploy to the Germany. Some troops deployed by air, but some troops deployed by maritime forces. And it is normal that it takes so long time. And the second one is to test their logistic capabilities. The forces also bring their requirements together with them, but they are also supplied by the host nation in the area in terms of oil requirements, for example. But the ammunition is most likely delivered from home countries. So it's a complex exercise. The main purpose was to test all the capabilities and to train the units. And for NATO, one of the most important points is to improve the interoperability capabilities. The interoperability means the ability of troops and personnel from different nations to work coherently and effectively. So interoperability is one of the main objectives of this exercise too.
Is it a deterrence for Russia, or it's a deterrence for China, maybe for the third parties? How do you see this training?
So usually exercises are carried out on fictitious scenarios, but this exercise was carried out like an operation, and the scenario was a real threat scenario. It is stated in some NATO's websites and NATO headquarters websites. Although Russia is not mentioned here, but everybody knows that the threat perception of NATO in Europe is mainly Russia, especially in the Baltic region, because Baltic region is the most vulnerable region of NATO to Russia because of its proximity, because of its historical background, and the geography of the region. So it is a kind of also a message to Russia that NATO demonstrates its capabilities and its resolve and resolute and the cohesion of NATO.
Is this exercise mainly political signaling, or does it significantly improve interoperability, as you mentioned, logistics and rapid deployment capacity? And what were the military concepts that tested in this exercise?
So the primary purpose of this exercise is, as I said, is the improvement of capabilities, testing of capabilities of the forces. Every exercise is also a kind of strategic messaging to Russia. But this is not the prior issue because this is not the first exercise of NATO. NATO carries out exercises on a regular basis, and this exercise is one of the planned exercises of NATO for 2026. Although it is presented as the largest exercise of NATO, it is only the largest exercise of NATO in 2026. In 2024, there was a very large exercise which was joined by 90,000 forces, troops. So this is much smaller than this. In that sense, it is the largest of the 2026, but not so large exercise. It is natural because the purpose of this exercise was to test the Allied reaction force, not the entire forces or the defense forces of the nations.
Okay. Turkey also joined the exercise with a large force. What is or what are the importances of the Turkish forces both to NATO and Turkey?
This exercise was important for Turkey to test our own capabilities because the
Mhm.
Anadolu, the amphibious assault and drone ship is for the first time deployed such a long distance. It has been the test of Turkey's also force projection capability. There were new capabilities that were deployed to that distance. In that sense, it was important for Turkey to train our personnel, troops, units, capabilities, and test them. The second part of it is to contribute to NATO's deterrence. Nowadays, there are some friction points between the Europeans and the United States, and the United States has already made a decision to withdraw its forces from Europe. US has around 60,000 forces in Europe. It's an important capability and it's an important deterrence capability. In the case of that these forces are withdrawn from Europe, there will be a gap, and the European NATO countries are trying to fill this gap. Germany seems like has assumed already an important role in this. Turkey, being one of the largest NATO military powers, has decided to also join with a large force. Turkey, being a NATO ally, has always contributed both to NATO missions and exercises. But this is not the priority for Turkey because Turkey is also facing other challenges and threats. And this region is quite far from Turkey, the Baltic region. However, NATO is an alliance of 32 nations, and in case of an aggression to NATO, the 32 nations has to respond to this jointly and collectively. Turkey's deployment of such a large force to Baltic region has been important for the European NATO members. They needed that and they had welcomed this, but there are other points maybe we can talk on it. They
Yeah,
now see how important Turkey for the security of Europe, but their policies do not match with what Turkey contributes to NATO. This is another point of discussion. So
sure.
this has contributed definitely to the deterrence of NATO.
Okay, as you already mentioned, we know that the United States plans to reduce its military presence in Europe. Does this exercise signals that Germany and Turkey will be the main security givers or assume a higher role to fill the capability and force gap possibly created by the future of United States withdrawal from Europe?
Germany is important for Europe because Germany, in terms of its geography, is at a very central location and is close to Baltic region and to the Balkans region. So it is important for this reason. And secondly, Germany is the biggest economy of Europe, so that they can sustain a large force. And thirdly, historically, Germany has been a country of a military. It is also sometimes dangerous that Germany, if get over militarized, it leads to some concerns in Europe. However, Germany can play an important role to fill the gap which is going to be created after the withdrawal of US forces from Europe. And it's very natural. I mean, no any other country can assume such an important role in Europe, geographically, economically, and also maybe politically. So it seems like Germany is also willing to do this because in the Munich Security Conference, the Prime Minister of Germany stated that even if US still remains in Europe with some forces, Europe needs to develop their own strength. So they don't want to be very much reliant on United States as they used to be since the end of the Second World War. They want to develop their own capabilities. Turkey is at a very strategic location. It is also important for NATO. Turkey has already contributed to the NATO since its membership, which started in 1952, by sustaining a large armed force, by joining many important NATO missions. But Turkey is also facing serious security problems in its region, both conventional threats and non-conventional threats, so that the priority of Turkey is to deal with the threats that it faces in our region. So Turkey has to make a balance. Turkey probably will continue to support NATO, but on the other side, there is an issue. I mean, Europeans now see how important Turkey is for the security of Europe. They want Turkey to contribute more to the NATO and to the security of Europe. But on the other side, they are still insisting on not accepting Turkey as a full member of European Union. So that's a
I was gonna
contradiction.
ask about this since you get into details. I will ask about the European efforts to establish a joint military force. And as known, Turkey is one of the candidate members of the European Union. So, how do you see the relationship with Europe and Turkey will be affected based on the efforts of European states to establish a joint military presence, joint military forces in Europe?
First of all, I don't think that the European Union will have a separate joint military force. There has been some initiatives in this regard, especially France has been very advocative to this project, but it hasn't been realized because it is going to be a duplication of NATO. I mean, most of the European countries are at the same time NATO countries. So if you have NATO, there is no need to create another military alliance in Europe. On the other side, Europeans, even if US reduces its support to NATO, they want to sustain and maintain NATO. They believe that NATO is important for them because there are also countries which are not European member nation, like Turkey or Norway or now United Kingdom. They are members of NATO, but they are not members of European Union. So coming to Turkey and European relations, Turkey, in my opinion, did and has fulfilled all its obligations for membership, in my opinion. But it is the European Union which hasn't accepted Turkey. It is not because Turkey is not ready for EU membership, but it is very political. It's also another question whether Turkey wants to become an EU member. Because when you become an EU member, it is also kind of restraint for the member countries. There are too many regulations that really limit the flexibility and freedom of the countries for their foreign policy, for their production, economic issues, and so on. So in this situation, maybe even if they want Turkey, Turkey may not want to become an EU member nation. There has been a very strategic changes in the world issues, especially in the last 5, 10 years. So for the NATO side, it was very clear, I think, in the Munich Security Conference, the United States, the Secretary of State made a speech. In his speech, it was very clear. He said that the United States will continue to be a member of NATO and will be very supportive, but they don't want to provide conventional forces for Europe. The Europeans have to build up the conventional forces that they need. However, the United States will continue to provide strategic assets like nuclear capabilities, space capabilities, command and control systems, and so on. So it doesn't seem like that NATO, US is leaving NATO because there were debates on this, especially after the Greenland issue.
So you mentioned a good point. As we know, the United States President Trump has plans to annex Greenland to the USA. That his statements led to debate whether NATO will dissolve in the near future, or do you think NATO will survive?
I mean, initially the United States stated that, especially President Trump, that he wants to annex Greenland to the United States, and that created a big tension between the Europeans and the United States because Greenland is an autonomous region of Denmark. Denmark is a NATO country, and USA is a NATO country. However, it seems like that the tension is eased now. Later on, especially in Davos, Trump has stated that they will not annex Greenland militarily. According to US plan, now they want to have some sovereign territories inside Greenland as military bases, and I think Denmark will agree on this. And the second point, the United States wants to work with Denmark together for natural resources. So this issue has not been resolved yet, but when President Trump stated that he wants to annex Greenland to the United States, that really has created a big tension inside NATO, and that has led to the discussions whether NATO is dissolving. However, at the Munich Security Conference, as I mentioned, the US has stated their official opinion about NATO. They will remain in NATO, and although they will reduce their presence in Europe, because NATO is also serving the interests of the United States and has served the interests of the United States for many years. It's a credible organization. There are 32 nations in NATO. It's politically and militarily an important power and organization. So why should the US leave NATO? Even if they want to leave NATO, I think it won't be rational for the United States to leave it because it serves, as I said, to the security interests of United States as well.
Yeah, thank you, General. So, any closing remarks you want to make?
Thank you, first of all, for the questions you asked. Maybe I should also add that Turkey has contributed with very important capabilities to this exercise. There were unmanned systems, the TB3, Bayraktar TB3. An important unmanned ground vehicle, Aslan. The ground vehicles, unmanned ground vehicles, are newly developing. They need to be much more sophisticated. It is not an easy function. So it also has attracted a lot of attention in this exercise. And Europe, one of the weaknesses of Europe is the unmanned systems. They fell behind the unmanned technologies and developments mostly. In Europe, they try to close this gap, especially the war between Russia and Ukraine has shown how important the unmanned systems. Now it has become a drone warfare, and which really has changed the traditional fighting tactics, techniques. Turkey has made serious progress in unmanned systems, and as you know, Europeans also want to cooperate with Turkey and wants to benefit from the experiences of Turkey in that sense. So finally, I can say this exercise was a bit different from other exercises because United States has reduced or has started reducing their forces. Europeans need to fill this gap, and they want Turkey to contribute more to NATO. But on the other side, they have to also contribute to Turkey in different areas. So it's a kind of, I don't know whether it's going to be a win-win policy. We will see.
Thank you for your remarks, General.
It's my pleasure.
So we talked about the Steadfast Start 2026. We hope you enjoyed it, and we really hope to see you on our other videos.